Hey everybody, happy Friday to you all. January is breezing through like a hot day in the summer, man. We're going to be in summertime before you know it. Welcome to another edition of Canna Talk with Roz. Roz is unfortunately under the weather today, so I'm going to be leading the charge today, but we wish her well. She is going to be listening in. I'm sure she may even chime in on some questions. So I know her spirit is here with us today. Again, thank you all for taking time out of your busy schedules to be here. We are again talking about hemp. Industrial hemp is the conversation and the topic of the day, and has been so for the last few weeks for us. So we're just excited, to continue this conversation, to continue to get you all the best information we can to get you guys ready and prepared for entering this new industry that is coming online in a major way in 2019. We have several guests here today that are going to share with you guys such great information, so I'm excited. As you know, we bring on some of the best in the industry to talk to you about what's going on in their respective states, what's going on around the country, and just making sure that we have some open dialogue about how we can organize ourselves as a little guy, if you will, in this new industry as it comes online. So thank you guys again. We have Charles Wu with us from the JARVIZ Project. Charles, if you want to say a few welcoming words to everybody.
Yeah, definitely, Eric. Thanks a lot for the intro. I'm just really excited to talk with Jerry and Les and Erica. So I'm going to keep my mouth shut and let the experts talk and just start taking notes and listening.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, let me go through our lineup and we'll start with ladies first. Now, I mentioned that Roz was a bit under the weather, so she is not joining us today. And our first guest, Erica McBride Stark, is also joining us today. And she's a little bit under the weather too, so we're going to do what we can to lift her up and to bear with her as she fights through this. You know, even as dealing with the flu, she got on to talk about this, and I think it's a testament to how important this conversation is and how important this topic is. So, Erica, thank you for being here with us. Now, standing in, kind of, helping in tag team, if you will, is her husband, Les Stark, who is also here. And Les is going to share with us a bit of history when it comes to the hemp industry in this country and how we kind of got to where we are today, if you will. And then we also have Jerry Raw, who's a member of Minorities for Medical Marijuana and also the founder of the Freedom to Grow Conference, which is coming up this April. And he's going to tell us all about that and talk about what the mission behind that is and how you guys can get involved. There is a lot going on right now in this industry. And, now is the time to really start figuring out what is your place in this industry. So let's start out with, some history. I'm a history nerd. I love to talk history. I love to learn more. And so, Les, if you could, I know you're standing in for us today, and it was kind of impromptu, but share with us a little bit about the history of industrial hemp in this country, and keeping in mind that some of the folks who are joining us, they are certainly in different stages of this walk, if you will. Some have already started businesses. Some have been growing this for some time. But many of our viewers and our listeners are brand new to this. They just learned a couple weeks ago that industrial hemp was actually different than cannabis, right. That we get in the stores and the dispensaries. So, talk to us a little bit about the history.
Well, hemp was grown basically in every state of the union from its early days. A lot of people, like I always tell people that in school, we learned in elementary school that in 1794, Eli Whitney invented the cotton gin. And when he invented the cotton gin, that's made the mass production of cotton feasible. But what they don't tell us in school is, okay, what did we use before cotton? And before cotton, especially here in the Northeast, we used almost no cotton at all. We only used three fibers: hemp, flax, and wool. And virtually every single farmer in the entire state of Pennsylvania, which is where I concentrated my research on, although it could be said with other states in the Northeast and even in the South too. Every farmer grew a patch of hemp. they grew a patch of flax, and they raised some sheep for wool. And it's those three fibers that we made our homespun clothing out of. Now, a lot of people think of hemp as a really tough, coarse fiber that was used for rugs and grain bags and, Conestoga wagon covers and really tough material like that. So they don't realize that it could also be used for fine linen. But actually, I have accounts from the 1700s that say that here in Pennsylvania, we grew some of the best hemp in the world, made some of the finest linens. And if you took the best flax linen at the time and the best hemp linen, you had to be an expert to tell the difference between the two. So every state has their own unique history of hemp. They grew it in Virginia, and a book was written about the history of hemp in Virginia. Kentucky hemp was huge in Kentucky. There's a couple of really good books written about the history of hemp in Kentucky. And Missouri was big. It was big in Illinois, and virtually every state could, tell many stories. I concentrated my research in the state that I'm from, Pennsylvania, and we just have a fascinating history. I'm from Lancaster County, Pennsylvania. We're known worldwide for the Amish and Mennonite farmers here, and we're one of the best agricultural counties in the world. We have some of the best soil in the world, and we have a really unique and fascinating history with hemp. And my research shows that between 1720 and 1870, in that 150-year time period, there were over 100 water-powered mills for processing hemp fiber just in Lancaster County alone, and there were dozens more hemp mills in all the surrounding counties. I found about 3 dozen hemp mills in neighboring York County, about 3 dozen hemp mills in Berks County, which is where I currently reside, and there was hundreds of hemp mills all throughout the state. And that fiber that was milled in those mills were used primarily for homespun clothing, but they made virtually any type of fabric, from sheets, pillowcases, towels, curtains, dresses, shirts, pants, hats, belt buckles, just about everything. And then there was almost as many oil mills for processing oil from the seed as there were mills for processing the fiber. And that oil was used in paints and varnishes and lacquers and lubricants, soaps, printer's ink, and lamp oil. And then the remaining seed cake that was left over after the oil expressed from the seed was fed to the livestock. So it's one of those things where, what they say with the pig, you can use everything but the squeal. With hemp, you can use virtually every part of it except the roots. And there's a lot of people that are trying to figure out what can we do with the roots. I heard some people talking about making teas out of it and so forth. But it just has this fascinating history. And here in Pennsylvania, before I did my research, almost nobody had ever, known anything about it. For some reason, this history has been virtually erased from our collective memory.
And what of the mills?
How they did that, to sort of just erased it. When I say that there was 100 hemp mills in Lancaster County, I'm the one who discovered that fact, because no one else had ever looked into it before. There was other
and how many are still are there?
Grist mills and so
Can you hear
forth.
me? How many of those mills still exist there in the in the counties where, I mean, you found the documentation of them, but are they all gone? Are they? Is there still some infrastructure still in place?
They're pretty much all gone. In a lot of cases, you have the crumbling ruins of old mills. Sometimes you can see where they directed water from the creeks to, they call that a mill race. It's directed into the mills. In a lot of cases, like for example, maybe it was used as hemp mill until 1860, let's say, and then in 1860 they built a grist mill or converted it to a grist mill, and then it was a grist mill for another 20 or 30 years, and then it got converted into an old garage and so forth. So I haven't found any of the examples of the old hemp mills with the machinery in it. However, one of the unique aspects of these mills was the hemp millstones, or I call them hemp stones. And a hemp millstone is very unique. Most people are familiar with what a grist mill looks like. It's kind of donut shaped. You have one in the bottom and one in the top, and that ground corn or wheat into flour. But a hemp millstone is very unique. They're cone shaped, and they weighed about 1,600 pounds, and they were built conical so that they would roll in a circle over top of the fiber. And I've been able to find these hemp millstones in museums and private collections all throughout the state. I found about 30 of them so far. There's 4 of them at a museum in Lancaster County called the Landis Valley Farm Museum. There's one at the Hans Herr House, which is at the center of the first European settlement in Lancaster County. Found one at a mill or at a museum in Doylestown called the Mercer Museum. And then the rest are in private collections. In some cases, they're land stream bed site of the old mills. And I always love the hempstones because it's, tangible proof of this old industry. And like I said, I've found about 30 of them so far, but there's probably many more waiting to be discovered, in some cases in people's backyards that you just can't see from the road, and in a lot of cases in, at the sites of the old mills. And some are probably already sunk deep into the soil, never to be found again, except for by some future archaeologists or so forth.
Yeah. I'm going to come back to you with a history question in regards to where I want to take the conversation now. And Erica, I want to turn to you really quick in regards to first tell folks, the name of your association and where they can find you. But more importantly, what are the missions of your association, and why do you feel it's important for folks to, organize themselves in associations and join them, and how do they fit in this larger picture, if you will, as this new industry is coming online?
And right before you go, Erica, I just want to jump in. Les, can you mute yourself? Because there's a little bit of feedback, I think, between you and your wife.
Okay.
That's why I came upstairs.
Is that muted?
So I'm Erica. I'm the executive director of the National Hemp Association, and we can be found online at nationalhempassociation.org. We are a nonprofit membership organization. Our primary mission up to this point has been in getting the federal legalization passed. Now that that's been accomplished through the passage of the most recent Farm Bill, we are going to transition into being more of a trade association and helping people looking to get into the industry to find the resources that they need to do so. We still will have some legislative work to do because now that hemp is no longer a controlled substance, the DEA is out of the equation, yay. But it has given full authority of CBD over to the FDA, and there's still a little bit of uncertainty swirling as to how the FDA is going to categorize CBD and what the legal path forward is going to be. So our path is twofold. Like I said, helping get the resources out there for people looking to get into the industry. We can help with general farming and best practices. We certainly have some ideas of how smaller individuals can get into the market, even if you don't have really large plots of land to work with. And also to educate the general public as to why they need to seek out hemp products and support the industry in that way with their pocketbooks.
Yeah, and two things in regards to, what are some of the ways you do see for small scale farmers to be able to get into this? We get a lot of calls on a regular basis, hey, my family has, 10, 15, 20 acres. Is this something I should look at, or, is this more of a industry for folks who have, 300, 500, 1,000 acre plots? And then also, I know you carry around to conferences some of the products. I don't know if you have any of those there on hand that you could show people, and kind of see, so they can see what some of the end products look like as well.
Yeah, unfortunately, I don't really have anything overly handy. But in general, I think there's room for both scenarios. When we talk about supplying like the American auto industry, yes, then we're going to need farmers with very large acres to able to supply manufacturing. But I think there's also going to be some very niche markets that will be suitable for not only co-ops to band together to create larger acreage, but independent farmers and even urban farmers, that they can find their way into the market as well. Things like artisan hemp. It's becoming vastly more popular to be able to take hemp flower directly to the market without extracting it into CBD, but as an alternative to cigarettes or as an alternative way to consume CBD by taking the flowers, where consumers could either smoke it or vape it or create their own edibles with it. So I think that artisan hemp would be a really good market for smaller urban type farmers. There's also a lot of interest in using hemp as microgreens for local restaurants to add to their salads or garnishes on their plates. Vertically integrated, like pop-up juice gardens, could be using the leaf, that nature, in smoothies, and also, you know, producing small amounts of seed that can be used in all kinds of nutritional markets. I'm also very interested to see urban rooftop gardens and how hemp can play into that and help with not only the air quality in cities, but also we can look to taking over vacant lots and using them to remediate the land and bring green spaces back into urban communities. Just a few ideas off the top of my head where I think smaller entrepreneurs really have a chance to carve out an important niche in the larger commodity market.
Hey, Erica,
Absolutely.
just to jump in real quick,
Go ahead.
and it got me thinking, but, you know, a lot of us people, I mean, you and your husband, Les, you guys are obviously incredibly knowledgeable about all this hemp industry. But most of us are looking at this, you know, we're just saying, hey, you know, hemp is marijuana's other cousin. You can do CBD with it. But now you're talking about automobiles and plastics or whatnot. And then Les was talking about how hemp oil was used for, you know, oils, like for, you know, lighting things and everything. Can you maybe talk a little bit more about that, or just help the audience, or just even help me understand, is hemp just about better, is it just a supplement just for CBD, or it seems like there's so much more?
Actually, ultimately, while CBD is getting all of the attention now, ultimately it's going to probably be the smallest piece of the overall cannabis industry. And it really is going to be the fiber, where not only is it going to help with the sustainability factor for our manufacturing practices, but it's going to improve the environment, and it's going to, they say that 25,000 different products can be made out of hemp, and it sounds like a gross exaggeration, but actually it's not. When you talk about all of the plastics, all of the paper products that we use that are just totally consumable and thrown away, filling in landfills, and how much hemp can replace a lot of that market. And even for a lot of wood products, even if you don't replace all of the wood, if you replace just a portion of wood pulp with hemp fiber, you increase the strength of that product by up to 15 to 18%. So there's all different manners of ways that hemp is going to be incorporated. There's a lot of interest in bioplastics. Now, that being said, there's a lot of research that still needs to be done in that department in order, while there are hemp plastics that are currently available, it hasn't been refined to the point to where you could say replace water bottles, but we will get there. I think, you know, when we replace the stupid plastic rings that they put on soda bottles, you know, just that alone would save wildlife and a lot of landfills. So
Erica, let me ask you this. We always talk about the need for more research, and I think that is very important. But I think there are some things that may be hindering research. Obviously, you know, previous or prior to the passing of the Farm Bill, you know, individual states allow for different, you know, levels of research, if you will. But what about the infrastructure and how that impacts our ability to even do research on some of these? I mean, Les talked a lot about how, you know, there were hundreds of mills that existed, which have, you know, virtually disappeared. You know, how close are we, and what can be done, you know, I guess from our standpoint, to be able to begin to rebuild this infrastructure to even do the research, and then to, carry on through with some of these other aspects. Because before we can get to making plastic bottles and, T-shirts and those kind of things, we have to have the infrastructure to be able to process it from once it's taken out of the field. The fibers are separated. There's still more processing that has to go into it in order to get to those lubricants, to get to those oils and so on. And, so talk about how, close we are, I guess, to getting to that point.
Okay. And it's a multi-tiered question in a lot of aspects, because within the hemp industry as it sits right now, there is a lot of low-hanging fruit, per se. For example, the whole seed market and the nutritional market and the oils that Les was referring to that are cold pressed from the seed, those can be done right now without any additional infrastructure needed. Any mill that can process like canola or any smaller type seed can process hemp seed. So that's a whole larger market that's there right now.
And Erica, just for someone like me who isn't as technically savvy as yourself or your husband, so what is this oil or what is this cold pressed seed used for? Is this for CBD or is this for?
And this is an important distinction and a misconception that we get a lot. The oil that we're referring to that's cold pressed from the seed, that is literally obtained by crushing the seed and squeezing the oil out of it. And that is what's used for cooking oil. It's used as a base for making soaps, lotions, and shampoos. It can also be used in like oil-based paints and lacquers, or an industrial lubricant. And you can also actually run a diesel engine off it, although that's not the most practical use for it. CBD, on the other hand, you should think of as an essential oil that's extracted from the flower, just like you would say like lavender essential oil or any other botanical essential oil. And that's where the CBD lies, in larger concentrations from the flower.
In the bud. The flower is the bud, Charles.
I'm sorry,
in terms
the bud.
Of what, yeah. I'm just making sure he understands that distinction, that it comes from, the oil that Les was talking about comes from the seeds, and you can get lots of seeds per acre if you're growing for that purpose. When you're growing for CBD, you're not getting a ton of seeds because you're growing specifically for the flower, for the bud, to be able to make that extraction that Erica is talking about.
Okay. So these are different aspects of the plant or different ways.
Yes, and they're totally different business models as well. They're planted differently. They're harvested differently. It's a totally different business model when you're looking at it from an economic standpoint as well.
And you start with the different cultivars. So, the different, I guess, strain, if you will, for common lingo, the different strains that are out there will dictate whether you get a industrial hemp plant that is, grown specifically for CBD, which the fibers are not very thick and, won't be much good for you for industrial uses. But the CBD is very high and rich in that case. Or you can have cultivars that grow very tall and skinny and you don't get much bud at all, but you're getting, tons of seeds, you're getting tons of fiber. And that's where we can get into, many of the other, when you're growing industrial hemp for textiles and those type of things, the fields and the farming practices that you use are, very akin to what you would do for any other farming practice. But when you're talking about for CBD, that's much more akin to when you're growing, if you were growing cannabis with THC in it. It's much more hands-on, much more involved, there's much more to do at every stage of the process. You're worrying about nutrients, you're worrying about, pesticides, you're worrying about all of those things because they're making it for human consumption. Whereas when we talk about what Erica was saying, the larger part of this industry is all of the things that we can make with this that won't be for human consumption, that we can make with the hemp plant and that don't touch on the CBD side of it.
Well, I'm just going to push back a little bit on that because we are talking about human consumption when we talk about the seed. The seed is probably the most nutritious seed on earth, and that tends to get lost in the conversation oftentimes too. It's far superior to soy as the human body being able to absorb the protein, and it also has a really heart-healthy balance of omega-3 and 6 fatty acids. So even when you're growing it for fiber, you do want to harvest the seed, and you do want to make sure that you're not growing it with pesticides and herbicides and all that other stuff. It's not as necessarily important that it be organic, whereas if CBD ideally should be grown in organic conditions. But certainly the human consumption aspect of that, and ultimately the animal feed aspect of that, once that is approved through the AAFCO and FDA, will be important as well. Because as Les said earlier, the entire plant is useful, and you waste none of it. Even when you grow it for fiber or seed or dual purpose, the plant material, the leaves and the leftover flour after the seed is threshed out, that can be used for CBD extraction. And while you're not going to get high concentrations, because you're going to have much larger volumes, it still is a value add to the crop itself, on top of what you get per pound for the seed and the metric ton of fiber.
So I guess now I want to maybe take the question to the historical perspective. On the hemp side, I mean, seems like just like another viable natural resource that was in use, call it 100 years ago. And, you know, the competitors were the paper industry, the competitors were the rubber industry, the competitors
plastics
were the industry, and the plastic industry. I smell a conspiracy theory, or I smell something. I don't know. You know? Maybe Les, do you want to hop in? And
absolutely. That Jack Herer's book, The Emperor Wears No Clothes. Jack Herer really made a great case for the conspiracy of industrial interests like DuPont, and you know, William Randolph Hearst had his newspaper empire, and he had vast holdings in timber that he planned to convert into paper pulp for his newspapers and so forth. And for over 20 years, maybe 25, 30 years even, a lot of us hempsters have really been preaching this conspiracy theory. And if you read the details of this conspiracy theory, you come across believing it 100%, and it seems to make sense. You almost have no question about its authenticity, and that is true. But I have to say that a few months ago, I heard some people kind of disputing this, and I looked up online some really fascinating articles that sort of debunk the conspiracy. And if you read these articles that sort of debunk that, it will make you think that, well, maybe we were wrong. Maybe it wasn't a vast conspiracy. It might have just been coincidental, because when marijuana was made illegal in Pennsylvania, it was 1933. On the federal level, it was 1937. And by that time, virtually every state had already made it illegal. And hardly any hemp was being grown by the 1930s anyway. It was a small cottage industry, although I know there's some talk about a guy in the 1920s named Schlichten invented this decorticator that was going to revolutionize the hemp industry. And right about that time is when, so the theory is that they created this big marijuana scare to get us all hyped up thinking about marijuana, when in reality what they really wanted to ban was hemp. And because if they would have used the word hemp, we're going to ban hemp, people would have been, what do you mean you're going to ban hemp? That's, my dad grew it, my grandfather grew it. They would have said we're going to ban cannabis. They would have, people would have said, well, you're banning one of the most important medicines. But they used the word marijuana to make it sound like something foreign and exotic, and like, a lot of Americans weren't familiar with the word. Like in 1938, one of the first people that ever got arrested under the new marijuana laws in Pennsylvania, in Lancaster County, was an 81-year-old hemp farmer named Enos Schaefer. And he had a long strip of hemp growing alongside of his garden, and he admitted he was growing it, but he said he had no clue whatsoever that it was illegal. But as far as he was concerned, he was growing hemp, and he was growing it for seeds to feed his chickens. And he testified at his trial. He told the judge, he said, I've been growing this my whole life. He said, my dad grew it. He said, we always fed it to the chickens. So, there is some evidence that, seems to indicate that, where we feel like it seems to be true. We just don't know for sure.
Yeah.
Well, I guess
Thank
then the
you.
question, I guess
Well,
then the
well,
question, or you know what, let me hold it, Eric. I'll let you take the
yeah.
conversation.
I want to bring Jerry in. I know he's been sitting over there chomping at the bit, and I appreciate him just sitting there. The conversation is so rich, and we try to get to as much as we can, and we
It
definitely want to get to
absolutely
some of
is.
the nitty gritty. And I think that's a perfect segue to bring in Jerry in terms of the conference. I mean, we are trying to tackle a lot in 1 hour. And this is why we spent the last 5 weeks talking about this topic, because, as Erica said before, right now, CBD is getting all of the conversation and just literally sucking all the oxygen out of the air. But we have so much more to go down this journey. And there are a lot of details. And so, Jerry, talk about, one, your conference, what people can expect, how they can, find out about it. And what you hope they'll take away from that conference as well.
Absolutely, Eric. And like you said, my name is Jerry. I'm an urban farmer, and I'm the founder of Freedom to Grow Conference, where we're going to be talking about everything hemp and cannabis. So what I would like your audience to know is everything they just heard today, they're going to hear from dynamic speakers across the spectrum of the industry. So like you said, very rich conversation we're having now. We had at the Freedom to Grow Conference, we had people like Kevin Hodge with Hemp Adobe, and he's going to be talking about Hemp Creek, which is an aspect of building that we could be using this hemp plant for. We have, like I said, just a ton of different speakers. We got Katie Hertland, who's out of Colorado. She's been growing out there for the last 18 years, hemp, from what I understand, who's just going to come and share with our audience about the processes of setting up your hemp farm, what that looks like. So what we are doing is we're calling on all of your farmers, your rural farmers who personally, when I got into this, I came in on the agricultural side, trying to help the Southern farmer find new revenue streams. So and especially through the South. So what we're doing is we're pulling all of our farmers from the rural areas and a lot of our urban farmers, which is our younger generation of farmers right now, as Erica mentioned, who are looking at it and saying, hey, how do I get involved in this? And we're connecting the two of them. Then we're putting in the chefs, our agripreneurs. We didn't even get into the real estate aspect of this either. So there are a lot of auxiliary businesses that can be started for those of us who might have felonies and can't actually touch the plant. We are going to give you other avenues. I built this conference off of a solutions and opportunity-based conference. So when you come here as a nurse, a doctor, a construction worker, whatever discipline you might be in, you're either going to walk away with solutions or you're going to walk away with an opportunity. One of those opportunities that I like to speak on is we have a young lady by the name of Andrea Herman. And what she brought to me a year ago was a product line that is very much for sale right now, that has lotions, deodorants, lip balm, and she's given the opportunity for our attendees to purchase this whole product line. They're legal they're structured here in the US and in Canada. And they have their own website. So that's an opportunity for a person to jump right in and be able to, if they want to change some of those formulations around, they have a basis to start at. So that's what I mean when I say opportunity. Solution, like I said, not just in the hemp space from a solution aspect, but just an overall agricultural space of solution. We'll be talking about aquaponics. We'll be talking about vertical growing. So growing in spaces like warehouses, like hospitals, like schools, on the wall. What does that look like? I have some speakers, Mark and Miss Barb Weimer, who are going to be coming in and talking about that. So this is where all the information is going to accumulate and be spoken about. And I want to tell the audience, we are a touring conference as well. So the conference starts April the 18th through the 20th here in Dallas at the Skyline Ranch, and that is 420 weekend. And it will move from Dallas probably to Louisiana. It's looking like it's going to be the next, Baton Rouge, Louisiana.
You know, Jared, let me ask you this, because we're getting some questions on Facebook in regards to, you know, what are the opportunities of getting in? What are the costs for, you know, getting a license in hemp? And Erica, you may be able to weigh in on this as well. You know, now that we have the Farm Bill out, now that this thing is starting to open up, states still have a say in how it unfolds in each individual state. So, you know, Jerry, if you could first respond in regards to what were some of the challenges you faced, you know, whether it be, you know, monetary, what were some of the costs you dealt with there in your state? And tell people what state you're in as well.
Okay, I am currently in Dallas, Texas. I'm based out of Dallas, Texas. I'm originally from Cincinnati, Ohio, and I work closely with my partner in Portland, Oregon at Amadula Farm. But one of these, it was a couple of challenges I want to bring up. One, with the conference space, most of the conferences were on the West Coast, and they were very expensive, one, to get there and then to participate. So that was another reason for our conference. It's $250. We made it for the demographics who have been looking for this information, you know, possible for them to come and get this information. As far as getting involved, like I said, once my partner and I, we linked up in Portland, he sat me down. He said, you know, Jerry, these licensing fees, just for, you know, a medical grow there is $250,000. Here in Dallas, Texas, it was 1.5 million. That leaves a segment of demographics totally out of the picture. And make it, well, I'll say this, and it makes it very hard for us to get involved in the industry. And so that was one of the roadblocks, if you want to say, and why I decided to even join with Minorities for Medical Marijuana, so we could start advocating for some of these laws being changed, in which Texas, we're in our legislative year. We need everyone to come out and support Minorities for Medical Marijuana here in Texas as we go about changing some of these laws to make sure that we're included and able to get, you know, get these licensing and be able to actively participate.
Yeah, absolutely. And Erica, if you want to, you know, talk about what you've seen in regards to licensing post the Farm Bill, or what are some of your predictions or anticipations?
Okay. Well, first off, it is important to note that the Farm Bill passing and federal legalization in and of itself does not make it legal to grow in an individual state. It is still illegal in Texas. It is still illegal in Ohio and Idaho. Now, Texas does have legislation being introduced, if it hasn't been already, that they do expect to pass this session.
We hope.
Yes, we hope. But it could likely be 2021 before Texas actually gets hemp in the ground. And it's also important to note that now that the Farm Bill has passed, USDA has to develop its federal guidelines, and then each individual state has to submit its program to USDA for approval. So since the government is shut down, that is not happening in any expeditious manner. So many of the states for 2019 have no choice but to operate under their 2018 research program guidelines. So what I see across the country is that license fees are all over the map. Vermont, for example, is $25. You know, Pennsylvania was $2,000. Kansas is something really crazy, like $3,000 or $4,000. But the average from what I'm seeing is around the $500 mark, and then maybe a $5 per acre add-on charge after that to try to scale it so somebody who's planting a small amount of acreage isn't paying as much as somebody who wants to grow thousands of acres. And I do expect with federal legalization that will sort of even out, and that may become the standard. But as Jerry said, every state is still going to be charged with implementing their own program, charging their own fees. And that's something that each individual will need to, have to lobby their state for, to make sure that the fees stay reasonable and accessible. But at any rate, it's nothing like looking at medical marijuana or adult use programs.
Right.
Should be obtainable by most.
And Eric, if you don't mind, Erica, I want to extend a offer.
I was hoping this might happen.
Yes, to Erica, because we do have other associations, and the National Hemp Association. We want to have you all come and be a part of our conference, and definitely have you speak, Erica. A lot of the information that you gave out today is definitely what this demographic is looking for. So that offer is out there. We do have the American Hemp Association. They are participating, and the Hemp Industrial Association is participating. And my thing is that the more education that we can put out there for people to be able to make their own choices as far as from an ethical and moral standpoint, the better the industry itself will become.
Agreed.
Yeah,
okay,
absolutely.
So hey, I've got a question. This is a Jerry and Erica question. I'm always looking at this. I spend a decent amount of time as a professional investor. So, as an investor, I always want to, using the Wayne Gretzky quote, I want to skate to where the puck's going to be, right? Where's that white space out there? So right now, everyone's jumping on board of CBD. Charlotte's Web had their IPO. CV Sciences is out there. And I'm not saying there's no gains on that end, but, that puck's already there. And when, the Uber driver's talking about investing in CBD, it's like, okay, good, but hey, that's where everyone else is. So you guys know this stuff. I'm listening to you, Jerry. You've got so much information. Erica, you know this. Even less, the history. Where are the white spaces? If you were to, if I wanted just to suck all that out of your head, why don't you just maybe spend 5 or 10 minutes, talk to us about the white spaces. Talk to us where you see the puck is going to go, so that, investors like myself, or maybe some entrepreneurs who are listening in, who want to get in, where do we start, right? Because at this point, to start another, Charlotte's Web, I'm not saying you couldn't do it, but, it's always a challenge.
Right. Well, investing itself should become much easier, because obviously up until now, banking has been illegal in the hemp industry because it was still a Schedule I controlled substance. So I think you're going to start seeing, maybe some more publicly traded companies coming online that can be invested in, or, my challenge is, and don't get me wrong, I love this industry. I love it to death, but everybody has the next latest and greatest thing. And there's really, really good people out there, and there's a little bit crazy people out there.
Absolutely.
So my challenge in trying to help people with investment and helping startup companies is trying to figure out how to vet them. I don't want to personally be responsible for having somebody sink their money into somebody who's crazy. And I'm hearing a lot from farmers that people are offering to contract them to grow for them, but yet there's no transparency as to who's actually funding this and what's going to happen with the hemp afterwards. So I think that the investment is safest in the infrastructure, in the processing facilities that will create the raw materials that can then be taken to market, or in investing in manufacturers who will take hemp raw materials and take a consumer product to market. Not that there's not startups that are worthy of investment, there absolutely are, but there is a little bit of cautionary words that need to be spoken in that regards, as far as due diligence and making sure you understand who you're investing with.
I agree 100% with Erica, and I think she hit it right on the nail. At this current time in the industry, the white areas are going to be those processing, those manufacturing plants that can take larger bulk biomass materials and create some of those product lines.
Mm-hmm. But Charles, I will chime right in and agree with them as well. But there are some challenges to that, and here's from an investment standpoint. And I can tell you this because I'm personally working on a few projects, and this is what I'm getting right now with CBD commanding such top dollar. It makes it virtually more expensive to grow for other purposes, and it makes it less attractive for an investor to invest in the next 10, 15, 20 years down the road, when right now CBD is winning so bigly, if you will. Yes. So there are some challenges to getting there. What it does take is a little bit of foresight and vision to realize that this market is going to eventually, CBD isn't going to go anywhere. But that we are going to eventually move on to other areas and look for those white spaces. And so the investors who are savvy enough will understand that, we're going to need to, lay the infrastructure that currently doesn't exist here in our country. I mean, that's one of the biggest issues, not just here, but around the world. There are very few countries that actually have the infrastructure to be able to process industrial hemp on a, industrial scale for this industry. So, it's something for, investors to look at, looking at smart teams, and I think that's in terms of folks who are looking to put together packages for that, you're going to have to look at building the teams that can actually, communicate to an investor that you have the capacity, to build the parts of the industry that are not yet there. So it's almost like we have to, which comes first, the chicken or the egg? Does the demand for these products come before the infrastructure to build these products, or do we create the infrastructure and the supply and then the demand follows? But it's a weird space, if you will.
And Eric, just to jump in there and piggyback off what you said, I absolutely agree. There's an inherent risk in investing in startups in this industry. One of the ways we've been able to bring people, the questions that we get most, is, hey, how do we get into this? Is my partner who owns the Amadula Farms there in Portland. What we do is we do tours, and then we'll do like a one-day or weekend boot camp where they get to come to that farm, they get to see it, touch it, smell it, and hear from experts while they're out there, so that, they can now see actually what are some of the costs going to be, what are some of those risks going to be in getting into this. And then, like you said, having good partnerships and knowing people. It's still very early in this, so relationships are very important at this time. And so once they're able to experience that, we feel like they now have a better grasp and able to say, hey, yes, this is what I want to invest in, or this I'm not going to invest. Or when they hear from someone else and they know that, oh, they didn't bring up licensing, or, oh, they didn't bring up these are red flags to them now that says, hey, I don't need to deal with this person or this organization.
Yeah. And I can tell you, Minorities for Medical Marijuana, we do have a co-op that we're establishing. Again, we have several members who have land. We have a ton more people who are reaching out to us who have land. And so, one of the things that we think is going to be a way for minorities in particular to participate, and not just participate, but to thrive in this industry, is by working together, by forming co-ops. And that's not just on the farming side, that's on the, on the full vertical, if you will. Last week we had on some folks from Colorado who had a co-op, and talking about what that looks like, and how the way that co-op was set up, it allowed for the members of the co-op, i.e. your farmers, your folks who are, interested in, small, the small guy, if you will, they formed the co-op, and then they partner with a large scale investor to be able to get the funding that they need to build, you know, whatever infrastructure. So whether that be a processing facility for the seeds, or, you know, for a decortication center, or whatever the case, so that they can collectively share knowledge, share resources, share information. And when we talk about licensing costs, you know, they may be able to even share on those expenses. So as an organization, we invite you all to join us. We're going to be connecting to resources like Erica, like Jerry, like Les in several different states in order to be able to set up these co-ops so that folks can be able to, you know, really find a niche in this area and be able to utilize the you know, the breadth and depth of an organization.
Hey, Eric, 2 points, and one is a question and then one is a point, segueing back to the Freedom to Grow conference. And my question to you, and even Eric and maybe Charles can jump in on this, and you might have already touched on this in past segments, but the vertical model versus the horizontal model. What's your take? Which is, I want to say, I guess, better?
When we say a preference?
Yes. What's the preference?
Well, I am all in favor, in particular, coming from a state in which we set up a medical marijuana program that requires vertical integration. And for those of you who don't understand what that is, when we talk about a vertical integrated model, we're talking about having everything from the cultivation, so putting seeds in the ground, to a finished product that goes into a dispensary and is sold in a dispensary, is all under one organization. So from seed to sale, everything is under one organization. And here in Florida, by law, it is illegal to outsource any aspect of that component. Now, our governor has just kind of come in and, you know, torn that apart in a state where we're very conservative. It's very interesting that we chose to go with a model that goes against free market principles, which I believe a horizontal model does, which allows you to have different licenses for the cultivation, a different license for the processing and manufacturing, a different license for dispensing. When you open it up from a horizontal model, I believe you allow more opportunities for us to enter the market. You know, I think there's a lot of excitement here in Florida from, you know, not just minorities, but just the overall advocates. We would like to see more businesses come into the market, because then those free market principles like competition will drive down prices and allow for, you know, for the consumer to be able to afford the medicine or whatever end user product that we're making, if we're talking about hemp and so on. So I prefer a horizontal model. I think that's the best case for not just for minorities in particular, but at the end of the day, what we're really talking about is small business versus big business. And don't get me wrong, as Erica shared earlier, there's a space for big business in this industry, you know, and I'm not against big business at all. But at the end of the day, I want to make sure that the small guys get a win as well. And I think we do that through co-ops. And I think we do that through horizontal models and so on. Erica, I don't know if you had a couple comments to add to that before we go ahead and wrap up.
Yeah, I also, something that I personally would like to see more of across the country in medical marijuana programs is the ability for CBD to be sourced from hemp programs. I hear across the country where, you know, obviously if you're a grower for medical marijuana, your highest profit margins are in the high THC strains, and that limits the amount of CBD products that are available to participants in that program. And as long as the same GMP practices are used by under a hemp program, I don't see any reason why those CBD products can't be sold in dispensaries. You know, and I think that would be a way to make it a little bit more horizontal, let more people enter the space rather than just those with the millions and millions of dollars to get a medical marijuana grow license. So yeah, that was just my only comment there.
Okay, so maybe to wrap things up, let's try to get some actionable advice. I think a lot of people listening in, you know, let's just ask the question, and I'll use myself as an example. You know, I just realized I've got 40 acres of land just sitting there, and, you know, it's just sitting there. I think we let someone grow soybeans on it before, but it's literally just sitting there in Illinois. Is there a way for me to use that in the hemp industry today? What, do I get a license? Do I just go plant some things? Do I go lease it out to a farmer? Then do I have to go sell it? You know, what do I do on that side?
Don't just go plant anything. Definitely do that. Do not do that.
Yeah, obviously, I wasn't like in a start putting.
Erica, you want to chime in?
Stuff, right?
One bit of advice I have for anybody looking to do it for the first time, whether you have 10 acres, 40 acres, 100 acres, 1,000 acres, is the first year you plant it, go small. Get some different varietals and try it out. I mean, yes, they call it weed and they call it weed for a reason, but having it grow and having a commercially successful crop are two different things.
That's right.
There is a learning curve. There's especially a learning curve with different varietals in different regions of this country. So I would encourage anybody, I know it's exciting and, you know, on a personal level, I want to see everybody just go out and grow it. But for a practical economic standpoint, plant an acre or two or whatever, you know, make sure you can afford to lose whatever you invest in your first year's planting to get yourself the experience. So you're ready to go big when the right opportunities come. And make sure that you do have, before you plant 50, 100, 1,000 acres, do make sure that you have a contract or you have a solid game plan of what you're going to do with it. Because keeping supply and demand in balance as we build this industry is going to be extremely important in order to make sure that everybody's successful, especially on the farming side. And we do roots to rise and to be successful.
So where do I go to sell my hemp? I mean, let's say before I even start this, that's a great thing, right? You know, planting it, they probably, you know.
Well, Charles, what I would say is one, I think you have to make first and foremost a decision whether or not it's going to be you who gets into this space or whether you have an asset that can be beneficial to someone in this space. And I think there's a very clear distinction between that. Not everybody's going to leave their 9-to-5 job in corporate America and go and be a farmer. And I certainly wouldn't recommend that. So I wouldn't recommend that you take your 40 acres, unless that's a bucket list thing for you. You know, I would tell you to join co-ops, find groups like Minorities for Medical Marijuana, like the National Hemp Association, find folks in your state who are already in this space and figure out how you can use your asset to make money in this passively. I don't know that everybody is going to be able to get into this. There are some who are, and those of you who are going to be, you know, farming, then you need to go to conferences like the Freedom to Grow Conference. You need to do your research on, you know, agricultural best management practices, on manufacturing best management practices. Understand that it is a business and that in order to do well in that business, you're going to have to do research. But my guess is that most people want to be a part of the industry, but they don't want to go and put seeds in the ground themselves. And so the best thing is to join co-ops, to work with folks in your community who are also trying to do this, and find someone in that area who can be a resource and an expert for you. Now, we're bucking up on about 3 more minutes. You know, I want people to understand that you have to make some decisions before you get into this industry. When I left my job in 2015, I realized that this was it for me. This was the industry. I either, you know, hit it big or I failed big. You know, this is where I am. And again, that has caused, that comes with a lot of sacrifice. It comes with a lot of hard work, a lot of, you know, months with no paychecks and, you know, so on and so on. So you have to make that decision as to whether you are going to be in this space or whether you have some type of asset or you have some type of interest in making, you know, I mean, your land alone is an investment into someone's business. So if Erica is, you know, looking to expand and have, you know, 100 acres in 5 different states, yours becomes an investment in her business. And so we can't just look at it like we're going to go farm. I know you want to say something, Jerry, before you finish up. Make sure you let people know where they can register for the conference, where they can connect with you. And then Les and Erica, if you guys can do that as well, let folks know where they can connect with you. What are some of your upcoming plans and how they can get involved with your organizations as well.
I just want to direct everyone's attention and really look for the Freedom to Grow Conference to be a great place for you to get a lot of the information you all heard today. It's taking place April the 18th through the 21st in Dallas, Texas at the Skyline Ranch. And you can go to freedomtogrowconference.com and register there. The conference is $250. We have a Agri Youth conference going on. We have a university and college summit that's going on at that same time. And then, like I said, if you happen not to make it, we will be coming to a city near you. Also, for those of you who want to get involved with Minorities for Medical Marijuana, we have a special discount for you that will be coming out. So check our Facebook page very soon. I mean, like this afternoon, and sign up to be a member, and you'll get a nice discount for coming to the Freedom to Grow Conference. But you can find us on IG by the same name. You can find us on Facebook, Freedom to Grow Conference, and register there. Or you can go right to the website, freedomtogrowconference.com, and register now. Thank you, Eric, for having me.
All right, and Les and Erica, if you guys can give a few words. I know you guys have two different organizations, so go ahead.
Right. So I want to say, Jerry,
Yes.
I like what you're saying. I want you to check out an article since you're in Texas. I wrote a really good article. You can find it on Google. I wrote an article, Texas Killed Hemp. And
Wait, repeat that. You broke up a little bit.
Speak into your mic a little bit more too, Les.
Sure. It's I wrote an article called How Texas Killed Hemp. And you can find it on Google. And it was from the 1930s. It'll break your heart, about an old guy named George Trout who tried to reintroduce the industry in Texas. And Texas came down on him and they crushed him. And they left him broke, and he died a sad death. But check that out, How Texas Killed Hemp. Another thing I'd like to mention is, I love your work. Minorities have a role in this hemp industry. A lot of people don't realize the extent that, hemp was very labor intensive. So in states like Missouri and Kentucky especially, and other slave states, slave labor was definitely, that's one of the reasons why hemp was able to exist. It vanished in states like in the Northeast and shifted to Kentucky, and they made extensive use of slave labor. So it's only natural then that the descendants of those slaves who used to work the hemp should be able to get their part of the new emerging industry.
Thank you for saying
my
that.
name is Lester. Say again?
I said thank you for saying that and bringing that to the forefront. I appreciate it.
That's a whole other subject we go in. That's a long subject. You can do some research on that too. The other thing, my organization, I'm the executive director of the Keystone Cannabis Coalition. We're centered here in Pennsylvania, and we're working on all cannabis issues, trying to legalize it, basically in the war, because when it comes down to it, nobody should ever go to jail for a plant. And I know they try to argue sometimes, say, well, nobody's going to jail for simple possession anymore, but they're turning people's lives over by the 25,000 people a year. Either get had their lives ruined or severely interrupted by arrest, and we're trying to change that in Pennsylvania. And we go state by state, and it's going to lead to a national legalization. And that's one of the key aspects of my work, is ending the war. And I'm going to turn it over to Erica. KeystoneCannabisCoalition.org, by the way.
Okay.
And I'm the executive director of the National Hemp Association, and that is nationalhempassociation.org. We have a lot of resources on our website to educate. If you contact us through the website, I will get that message, and we're happy to help. If we don't have the answer, we try to point people in the right direction. I've been honored to be here with you guys for having me, and I look forward to watching this industry blossom and all the diversity that we need to have in it, because that's what it's all about.
Absolutely.
Hey, Eric,
well, Charles Wu, thank you for being on as well.
Can I get my email out to Eric and Les and Charles? Is that
I'll
okay?
connect you all. I'll connect you all on. We'll get you connected all on email. We went over a little bit, so I want to go ahead and try to wrap it up. Okay. Charles, if you want to have a couple quick words, or
I think, why don't you sign off, and then we'll call it a day.
Okay. Well, ladies and gentlemen, again, thank you all for being here as we try every week to bring you some of the best in the industry, to give you firsthand information on what's happening and how you can get involved. Please connect with any one of the organizations you heard today. Obviously, I'm the board chair of Minorities for Medical Marijuana. We'd love for you to become a member and work with us, and let us work with you to get into this industry. Thank you all. I hope you enjoy your weekend. Spend some time with your family and friends. Erica, please get well. Roz, if you're out there listening, we ask that you get well too this weekend. So love on your family. And until next week, everybody, take care. This was another edition of Canna Talk with Roz.
Peace.